I'm sitting here in what used to be my cramped cubicle, but now it's a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. And I keep thinking about that moment, the exact moment when Richard Blackstone walked through those conference room doors, and my arrogant supervisor Marcus went from smirking to stone-cold silent in less than 3 seconds. You see, Marcus had just finished telling the entire management team how I was too emotional for corporate success and how my naive, female instincts made me unfit for the senior analyst position. He was practically glowing as he recommended they pass me over for the promotion I'd been working toward for 3 years, suggesting instead that they give it to his golf buddy from accounting. But then the door opened, and the homeless man I'd bought coffee for just 24 hours earlier walked in wearing a perfectly tailored suit, introduced himself as our new CEO, and asked to speak with me privately. The color drained from Marcus's face so fast, I thought he might actually faint. But let me start from the beginning, because this story, this impossible, life-changing story, started with the worst Monday morning of my career. It was 6:47 a.m., and I was already running late. My alarm hadn't gone off, my coffee maker had died sometime during the night, and I discovered that my only clean blouse had somehow acquired a mysterious stain that looked suspiciously like last night's takeout. I was speed-walking through downtown Chicago, clutching my worn leather bag and mentally rehearsing my presentation for the morning meeting, the presentation that could finally get me that promotion to senior financial analyst. 3 years I've been grinding at Meridian Financial Group, 3 years of 60-hour weeks and skipped lunches, and watching less qualified men get promoted over me. The morning air was bitter cold, that kind of Chicago cold that cuts right through your coat and makes you question your life choices. Steam was rising from the manholes, creating this almost ethereal fog around the early morning commuters who moved like ghosts in expensive suits. I was checking my phone for the time when I nearly tripped over him. He was sitting on the concrete steps outside the First National Bank building, maybe 60 years old, with silver-streaked hair that looked like it hadn't seen a proper cut in months. His clothes were layers upon layers, a faded military jacket over what might have once been a business shirt, worn jeans with holes at the knees, and boots that had seen better decades. But it was his eyes that stopped me. They were bright blue, intelligent, and when he looked up at me with this gentle smile, I saw something that made my chest tighten. He looked defeated, not aggressive or demanding like some of the homeless people I'd encountered downtown. Just tired, human. There was a cardboard sign beside him that read, "Veteran. Hungry. God bless." His hands were wrapped around an empty coffee cup, and I could see his breath in the cold air. Now, I need to be honest with you. My first instinct was to keep walking. I was already late, I was stressed about my presentation, and I only had $12 in my wallet, my lunch money for the rest of the week. But something about the way he smiled at me, this genuine, hopeful smile that didn't ask for anything, just acknowledged my humanity. I stopped. "Good morning," I said. "Good morning, miss," he replied, and his voice was surprisingly warm, educated. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" I looked around at the gray sky, the dirty slush in the gutters, the harried commuters stepping around us like we were obstacles. "Is it?" He chuckled. "Every day you wake up is beautiful, don't you think?" I found myself smiling despite my stress. "I suppose you're right." I hesitated, checking my phone again. 6:52 a.m. I had 8 minutes to get to the office, grab coffee from the break room, and make it to the conference room. But instead, I heard myself saying, "Have you had breakfast?" "Oh, you don't need to worry about me, miss. You look like you've got somewhere important to be." I looked at him again, really looked. His clothes were clean, despite being worn. His fingernails were trimmed. This wasn't someone who'd given up on himself. This was someone who'd simply run out of options. "Actually," I said, "I was just thinking I could use some company for coffee. There's a diner across the street. Would you like to join me?" The change in his expression was instantaneous. His eyes went wide, then soft, then bright with something that might have been tears. "Miss, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to. My name's Sarah, by the way. Sarah Chun." "Robert," he said, struggling to his feet. "Robert, just Robert is fine." The diner was one of those old-school Chicago places with red vinyl booths and waitresses who called everyone hon. We slid into a booth near the window, and I watched Robert's eyes take in everything. The warm lighting, the smell of bacon and coffee, the normalcy of it all. The waitress, a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and silver hair pulled back in a practical bun, approached our table. "What can I get you folks?" I looked at Robert. "Order whatever you want." He studied the menu like he was deciphering ancient text. Could I have a breakfast special? With scrambled eggs? Of course, Han, and for you, sweetie. I wasn't really hungry, but I ordered coffee and toast. When the waitress walked away, Robert looked at me with this expression of such genuine gratitude that I felt embarrassed. "You really don't have to do this," he said quietly. "I know, but I want to. When's the last time you had a hot meal?" He was quiet for a moment. "Yesterday, I found half a sandwich someone threw away. It was still good." My heart clenched. Here I was, worried about a $12 meal when this man was eating discarded sandwiches. "Robert, can I ask, how did you end up?" I gestured vaguely, not wanting to be rude. He smiled sadly. "How does anyone end up anywhere, I suppose? Bad choices, bad luck, bad timing." He paused. "I used to have a different life. But that's a story for another day." The food arrived, and I watched Robert close his eyes and say what looked like a silent prayer before taking his first bite. He ate slowly, savoring each forkful, and we talked about small things, the weather, the city, his observations about the morning commuters. "You know," he said, cutting his toast into precise squares, "I sit out there every morning, and I watch thousands of people walk by. Everyone's in such a hurry. Everyone's got somewhere to be, something important to do. But you stopped. Why?" I thought about it. "I don't know, really. You looked at me like I was a person. Not an obstacle or a source of money. Just a person." "That's because you are a person," he said simply. "A good person. I can tell." "How can you tell?" 58 years on this planet teaches you things. You learn to read people. Their eyes, their posture, the way they treat waitresses. He smiled at our server, who was refilling his coffee cup. "Thank you, darling." "You're very welcome, Han," she said, and I could see she'd taken a liking to Robert too. "You see," Robert said when she walked away, "kindness recognizes kindness." We sat there for almost 30 minutes. I completely lost track of time, which was so unlike me. Robert told me about his observations of city life, his theory that everyone was just trying to connect but didn't know how. He spoke about books he'd read, places he'd traveled before his life changed course. It wasn't until my phone rang that I remembered where I was supposed to be. "Sarah Chun," I answered, and my stomach dropped when I heard Marcus's voice. "Chun, where the hell are you?" "The meeting started 10 minutes ago." I looked at my phone. 8:42 a.m. "Oh God. I'm so sorry, Marcus. I got caught up in." "Just get here. Now. And you better have a damn good explanation." The line went dead. I looked at Robert, who had clearly overheard. "You need to go," he said gently. "I'm so sorry I lost track of time." "Don't apologize. This was the best morning I've had in months." He reached across the table and patted my hand. "You're going to be late for something important, aren't you?" "A presentation. For a promotion I've been working toward for 3 years." His expression grew serious. "Then you need to go. Right now." I signaled the waitress for the check, but Robert caught my arm. "Sarah," he said, and there was something different in his voice. More serious. "I want you to remember something. In this world, there are people who have power and people who have character. The lucky ones have both. The dangerous ones have power without character. But you have character. Don't ever let anyone take that from you." I stared at him. "What do you mean?" "Just remember what I said. Character matters more than you think." I ran the 6 blocks to Meridian Financial Group, my heels clicking against the sidewalk, my presentation folder clutched against my chest. By the time I reached the 42nd floor, I was sweating out of breath and probably looked like I'd been dragged through a hedge backwards. The conference room was glass-walled, so everyone could see me approaching. Through the transparent walls, I could see the entire senior management team seated around the polished mahogany table. And there was Marcus, mid-presentation, gesturing toward a PowerPoint slide that looked suspiciously similar to my research. I knocked on the door and slipped inside, trying to be as inconspicuous as possible. "So nice of you to join us, Chun," Marcus said without looking at me. "We were just discussing your quarterly analysis. Well, my interpretation of your quarterly analysis. I took the only empty seat, at the far end of the table, and tried to catch my breath. Around me, 8 pairs of eyes assessed my disheveled appearance with various degrees of disapproval. As I was saying, Marcus continued, the numbers clearly indicate a need for more aggressive portfolio management. Less emotional decision-making, more strategic thinking. My heart sank. He was presenting my work as his own, but twisting my conclusions to fit his more aggressive investment philosophy. Marcus, I said quietly, actually, my research suggested a more balanced approach. Your research, Marcus interrupted, finally turning to look at me with a smirk, was submitted after the deadline, partially incomplete, and frankly, shows exactly why we need someone with more maturity in the senior analyst position. He'd flooded my cheeks. Around the table, I could see the other executives nodding slightly. David Morrison, the CEO who was retiring next month, looked disappointed. Janet Williams from HR was making notes on her legal pad. I apologize for being late, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Let me guess, Marcus said, settling back in his chair with the satisfaction of a cat who'd caught a mouse. Traffic? Overslept? Or maybe you were helping some stray cat. A few people chuckled, and my humiliation deepened. Actually, I said, lifting my chin, I was having breakfast with a homeless veteran. The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus's smirk widened. Of course you were. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly what I'm talking about. While the rest of us are focused on our clients' portfolios, Miss Chen is out playing social worker. That's not. Sarah, David Morrison interrupted gently. Your heart is in the right place, but Marcus has a point. The senior analyst position requires someone who can prioritize company interests above personal, charitable impulses. With respect, Mr. Morrison, helping people doesn't make me less qualified. It makes you distracted, Marcus cut in. It makes you unreliable. You missed the most important presentation of your career to buy breakfast for a vagrant. The word vagrant hit me like a slap. I thought about Robert's intelligent eyes, his thoughtful conversation, his quiet dignity. He's not a vagrant. He's a human being. He's a homeless person who made you late for a crucial meeting, Marcus said. And frankly, this bleeding heart mentality is exactly why I've recommended that the senior analyst position go to someone with better judgment. My stomach dropped. You've already made a recommendation? Marcus's smile was predatory. I have. Tom Bradley from accounting has shown much more professional focus. Tom Bradley, Marcus's golf buddy who'd been with the company for 18 months and couldn't tell a derivative from a dividend. That's not fair, I said, and immediately regretted how young I sounded. Fair. Marcus laughed. Sarah, this is corporate finance, not kindergarten. Fair is what happens when you make smart choices and prioritize correctly. Around the table, I could see the other executives nodding. My 3 years of 60-hour weeks, my innovative analysis strategies, my consistent results, none of it mattered compared to one morning when I'd chosen compassion over punctuality. I think we've heard enough, Janet Williams said gently. Sarah, thank you for your dedication to the company. We'll be in touch about the position. Translation, thanks for playing. Better luck next time. As the meeting broke up, Marcus lingered behind. Nothing personal, Chun, he said, straightening his tie. But this is a competitive business. Maybe next time you'll think twice before playing Mother Teresa on company time. I gathered my things in silence, my cheeks burning with shame and anger. 3 years. 3 years of my life, and I'd lost my shot at promotion because I bought breakfast for a man who needed kindness. As I walked back to my cubicle, I kept hearing Robert's words. Character matters more than you think. Right then, it felt like character was the most expensive thing in the world. The rest of Monday dragged by like a death march. Word had already spread through the office about my morning disaster. I could feel the sideways glances, hear the whispered conversations that stopped when I walked by. Did you hear Sarah Chun miss the promotion meeting? She was helping some homeless guy instead of preparing. Marcus totally destroyed her in there. By lunch, I'd lost my appetite. By 3 o'clock, I'd received an email from HR asking me to schedule a career development conversation for later in the week. By 5 o'clock, I was seriously considering updating my resume. I stayed late, partly because I had work to catch up on, but mostly because I couldn't face going home to my empty apartment and confronting the reality of my stalled career. The office emptied out around me until it was just me, the cleaning crew, and the security guard making his rounds. Around 9 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from my mom. "How did your big presentation go, honey?" I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back. "It went fine. I'll call you tomorrow." I couldn't bear to tell her the truth. My parents had sacrificed so much to put me through college, had been so proud when I landed the job at Meridian. How could I explain that I'd thrown it all away for a homeless stranger? But even as I thought it, I couldn't bring myself to regret helping Robert. The image of his grateful smile, the way his eyes had lit up when I'd asked him to join me for coffee. That was worth something, wasn't it? I was packing up my things when my computer chimed with a new email. The sender was listed as d.morrison@meridianfg.com. David Morrison, our retiring CEO. "Sarah," it read, "I wanted to speak with you privately about this morning. Can you come to my office first thing tomorrow? There's something I need to discuss with you." David. My heart sank even lower. A private meeting with the CEO after the morning's disaster could only mean one thing. They were letting me go entirely. I rode the L train home in a daze, watching the city lights blur past the windows. In 24 hours, I'd gone from hopeful about my promotion to facing the possibility of unemployment. But as I climbed the stairs to my apartment, I found myself thinking again about Robert's words. Character matters more than you think. Maybe he was right. Maybe it did matter. Maybe not in the way I'd hoped, but in ways I couldn't yet understand. Tuesday morning, I arrived at the office 45 minutes early. I wanted to be absolutely certain I wouldn't be late for my meeting with David Morrison. I'd spent half the night practicing what I'd say, how I'd defend my actions, why they should give me another chance. The executive floor was nearly empty when I stepped off the elevator at 7:15 a.m. David's assistant wouldn't arrive until 8:30, so I sat in the waiting area, rehearsing my speech and trying to calm my nerves. At exactly 8 a.m., David emerged from his office. "Sarah, good. You're here early." He looked tired, older than his 62 years. "Come in, please, and close the door behind you." His office was impressive. Corner windows overlooking Lake Michigan, mahogany desk, walls lined with awards and photos from his 30-year career at Meridian. I took one of the leather chairs facing his desk and tried to project confidence I didn't feel. "David, I want to apologize again for yesterday." He held up a hand. "Actually, I asked you here to talk about something else entirely. Something that happened last night." I frowned. "Last night?" I received a phone call around 10 p.m. from someone very interesting. Someone who wanted to discuss you. My confusion deepened. "I'm sorry, I don't understand." David leaned back in his chair, studying my face. This person told me about a young woman who bought him breakfast yesterday morning. A woman who was running late for an important meeting but stopped anyway. Who treated him with dignity and respect when most people won't even make eye contact. The room suddenly felt very small. "David, I can explain. This person," David continued, "told me that in 30 years of business, he's met thousands of people with impressive credentials, perfect resumes, flawless presentations. But he's met very few people with genuine character." I stared at him, my mind racing. Who called you?" David's expression was unreadable. He asked me not to say, but he did ask me to arrange something. "We're having a special board meeting this morning. 9 a.m. I'd like you to attend." "A board meeting?" "David, I'm not even a senior analyst." "Just be there, Sarah. Conference room A." "And Sarah," he smiled for the first time since I'd known him, "wear your best suit." At 8:55 a.m., I stood outside conference room A, smoothing my navy blazer and trying to calm my racing heart. Through the glass walls, I could see the entire senior management team assembled around the table. Marcus looking smugly confident, Janet Williams with her ever-present legal pad, Tom Bradley from accounting fidgeting nervously in what he probably thought was his victory lap. I opened the door and took the one empty seat, ignoring Marcus's eye roll and the questioning looks from the other executives. "Ladies and gentlemen," David Morrison announced, standing at the head of the table, "thank you for accommodating this special meeting. As you know, I'll be retiring at the end of this month, and we've been in transition discussions with the board about new leadership." Marcus straightened in his chair, clearly anticipating his moment of triumph. This morning, I'd like to introduce you to someone who will be taking on a significant role in Meridian's future. David walked to the conference room door. Please welcome our new Chief Executive Officer. The door opened, and Robert walked in. Not the Robert from yesterday morning, not the man in layers of worn clothing with tired eyes and calloused hands. This Robert wore a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit, Italian leather shoes, and a confidence that filled the room. His silver hair was neatly styled, his posture commanding. But it was unmistakably him. The same intelligent blue eyes, the same gentle smile, the same presence that had made me stop on those concrete steps 24 hours ago. The silence in the room was absolute. Marcus's mouth fell open. Tom Bradley looked like he might be having a stroke. Around the table, every face showed the same expression of shock and disbelief. But Robert, this transformed version of the man I'd bought breakfast for, was looking directly at me with the warmest smile I'd ever seen. "Good morning, everyone," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to command. "I'm Robert Blackstone. Some of you may know me as the former CEO of Blackstone Industries, or as the current chairman of the Blackstone Foundation. Blackstone Industries, one of the largest investment firms in the Midwest. The Blackstone Foundation, one of the most influential charitable organizations in the country." I felt the blood drain from my face. "For the past 6 months," Robert continued, settling into the chair at the head of the table, "I've been working with your board of directors on a merger between Meridian Financial and Blackstone Industries. As of this morning, that merger is complete, and I'll be serving as CEO of the combined entity." He paused, letting that information sink in. Around the table, I could see the executives mentally recalculating their career trajectories. "Now," Robert continued, his eyes finding mine again, "I'd like to discuss something that happened yesterday. A small incident that some of you might consider insignificant, but which I consider to be one of the most illuminating character assessments I've witnessed in my 30 years in business." Marcus was no longer smiling. "Yesterday morning, I was conducting what you might call a field study. I spent several hours observing how people interact with those less fortunate, how they treat strangers, how they balance self-interest with human compassion. I felt like I couldn't breathe. In 4 hours, approximately 300 people passed by me. 300 people with somewhere important to be, something crucial to accomplish. Exactly one person stopped. One person looked at me, really looked at me, and saw a human being worth her time." Robert stood and walked around the table until he was standing behind my chair. "That person missed an important meeting because she chose kindness over ambition. She bought breakfast for a stranger not because it would benefit her career, but because it was the right thing to do. She listened to my stories, laughed at my observations, and treated me with a dignity that most people reserve for those who can do something for them in return." My cheeks were burning. I could feel every eye in the room on me. "Marcus," Robert said, turning to my supervisor, "I understand you criticized Miss Chun for this action. I believe your exact words were that her bleeding heart mentality made her unfit for promotion." Marcus's face had gone ashen. "Sir, I was simply trying to maintain professional standards." "Professional standards," Robert repeated slowly. "Tell me, Marcus, what do you think are the most important qualities in a senior executive?" Marcus stumbled through an answer about analytical skills and strategic thinking, but Robert cut him off. "In my experience, the most successful leaders are those who understand that business is fundamentally about people. People with stories, people with needs, people with dignity that doesn't depend on their bank account or their job title." His voice grew steel-edged. "Leaders who can see potential where others see problems, who choose character over convenience." He returned to his seat, but his gaze never left Marcus. "Which brings me to the personnel decisions that need to be made going forward. Tom Bradley, I understand you were recommended for the senior analyst position." Tom nodded mutely. "Based on what qualifications, exactly?" The question hung in the air like a blade. Tom's mouth opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Ms. Chun," Robert said, turning to me, "would you please explain to everyone your analysis of the Henderson portfolio restructuring?" For the next 10 minutes, I found myself presenting the complex investment strategy I developed for our largest client. As I spoke, I watched Robert's face, saw him nodding at key points, occasionally asking questions that demonstrated a deep understanding of the financial principles involved. When I finished, the room was quiet. That, Robert announced, is the kind of innovative thinking that will drive this company forward. Marcus, can you explain why such a talented analyst was passed over for promotion? Marcus looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. There were concerns about reliability. Because she helped a homeless veteran. She was late to a crucial meeting. She was late, Robert said, his voice dangerously quiet. Because she has something that no amount of education or experience can teach. She has character. She has empathy. She has the ability to see beyond her own immediate interests and recognize the humanity in others. He stood again, commanding the room with his presence. Effective immediately, Sarah Chin is promoted to Senior Vice President of Strategic Analysis with a salary of $145,000 and full executive benefits. She'll report directly to me and will lead our new ethical investment initiative. I felt like I might faint. Senior Vice President, that was 2 levels above the position I'd been hoping for. As for the rest of the management structure, Robert continued, there will be some changes. Marcus, your employment is terminated, effective today. Tom, you'll remain in your current position in accounting, where your skills are better suited. Marcus shot to his feet. You can't do this. I've been with this company for 8 years. And in 8 years, you've demonstrated a fundamental misunderstanding of what leadership means, Robert said calmly. Security will escort you out. The meeting continued for another 20 minutes, but I barely heard any of it. My mind was reeling, trying to process what had just happened. When the other executives filed out, most avoiding eye contact with me, Marcus looking murderous, Robert asked me to stay behind. I imagine you have questions, he said when we were alone. A few, I managed. Starting with, who are you, really? Robert smiled, the same warm smile I'd seen over coffee and eggs the morning before. I'm exactly who I was yesterday morning, Sarah. A man who's learned that the most important things in life can't be bought or sold. They can only be earned through the choices we make when no one important is watching. 6 months ago, Robert continued, settling back in his chair, when the board first approached me about the merger, I told them I had one condition. I wanted to evaluate the company's culture from the ground up, not through reports or presentations, but through observation. He gestured toward the window, where the morning sun was painting the city in shades of gold. I've spent the last month downtown watching how your employees interact with the city around them, how they treat service workers, how they respond to people in need, how they behave when they think their actions have no professional consequences. You've been homeless for a month. He laughed. Not homeless, exactly. I have a small apartment a few blocks from here. But I wanted to understand what it feels like to be invisible, to be dismissed, to be treated as less than human. It's educational. I thought about all the times I'd walked past homeless people, all the times I'd avoided eye contact or pretended to be on my phone. And yesterday was some kind of test? Yesterday was Tuesday, he said simply. I was sitting outside the bank like I had been every morning for weeks. Most days, no one stopped. No one spoke to me. A few people dropped change in my cup, but even that was done without eye contact, without acknowledgement that I was a person. He stood and walked to the window, looking out at the street below. But yesterday, this young woman in a hurry stopped and looked at me. Really looked. And when she asked if I'd had breakfast, there was no calculation in her eyes. No sense that she was checking off a good deed for the day. She was genuinely concerned about another human being. I struggled for words. You looked cold. And hungry. And human, he finished. That's all it was, Sarah. You saw me as human. Do you know how rare that is? I thought about my coworkers walking past homeless people every day, about my own past behavior, about how easy it was to look away from uncomfortable realities. Not rare enough, I said quietly. Exactly. He turned back to me, his expression serious. That's why I knew you were exactly the kind of person I wanted to work with. Someone who leads with empathy. Someone who understands that business success without human decency is just sophisticated sociopathy. But the promotion, the salary, that's too much. I don't deserve. Stop, he said firmly. Don't you dare diminish what you did. Don't you dare apologize for having character. The business world is full of people who can analyze numbers and create presentations. It's desperately short of people who remember that behind every portfolio, every investment, every decision, there are real people whose lives are affected. He returned to his seat, leaning forward with the intensity of someone sharing a profound truth. Sarah, I built Blackstone Industries from nothing. I've made billions of dollars, acquired dozens of companies, employed thousands of people. And I can tell you with absolute certainty that the most valuable employees, the ones who drive real success, are those who never forget that business is fundamentally about serving humanity. What about Marcus? And Tom? That seemed harsh. Robert's expression darkened. Marcus has spent 8 years creating a toxic culture of self-interest and callousness. He's bullied junior employees, discriminated against women and minorities, and consistently chosen profit over people. Yesterday was simply the final evidence I needed. And Tom is incompetent but harmless. Marcus recommended him not because he was qualified, but because he was controllable. That's not leadership, that's cronyism. I sat in silence, absorbing everything. The morning had started with me expecting to be fired, and now I was a senior vice president working directly for one of the most successful businessmen in the city. Why didn't you tell me who you were? Yesterday at breakfast. Robert's smile returned. Would it have mattered? Would you have treated me differently if you'd known I could affect your career? I considered this. Probably. Exactly. I needed to see who you really were, not who you thought I wanted you to be. And what I saw was someone who chose kindness over self-interest, even when it cost her professionally. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo, me and him sitting in the diner booth, him eating his breakfast special while I sipped my coffee. I hope you don't mind. The diner's security camera captured this moment. I'm thinking about framing it for my office. The day I met the person who reminded me why I love this business. The news of the merger and the management changes spread through Meridian like wildfire. By noon, everyone knew that the homeless man I'd helped had turned out to be our new CEO, and that my act of kindness had resulted in the most dramatic promotion in company history. The reactions were mixed. Some of my coworkers were genuinely happy for me. Jennifer from HR stopped by my new office, to congratulate me and share that she'd always respected my integrity. David from the research team mentioned that he'd noticed how I always treated the cleaning staff and security guards with respect, and how he tried to emulate that. But others were less pleased. I overheard whispered conversations about teachers' pet and unfair advantages. A few people suggested that what I'd done was calculated, that I must have somehow known who Robert really was. The hardest reaction came from Tom Bradley, who cornered me in the break room around 2 p.m. You know this isn't fair, right? He said, his voice bitter. I've been working toward that promotion for months. I have an MBA from Northwestern. Tom, I said carefully, I'm sorry you're disappointed. Disappointed? Sarah, you got promoted because you bought breakfast for the right homeless guy. How is that qualifications-based hiring? I looked at him, really looked. Tom wasn't a bad person, but he'd never shown interest in anything beyond his own advancement. He'd never asked about my weekend, never helped train new employees, never stayed late to help with difficult projects unless there was clear personal benefit. Maybe, I said slowly, it's not about qualifications. Maybe it's about character. He stared at me like I'd spoken a foreign language. Character doesn't balance portfolios, Sarah. No, I agreed, but it decides how you treat people when you're balancing them. That afternoon, Robert called me into his office for our first official meeting as CEO and Senior VP. How are you handling the transition? He asked. Honestly, it's overwhelming. This morning I thought I was going to be fired, and now I'm running a department I'd never heard of until 3 hours ago. The Ethical Investment Initiative, Robert said, is something I've been planning for years. The idea is to prove that sustainable, socially responsible investing can be just as profitable as traditional approaches. More profitable, actually, because it builds long-term relationships and community trust. He handed me a thick folder. These are the preliminary plans. I'd like you to review them and give me your thoughts. But first, I have a question. Okay. Do you regret it? Yesterday morning, I mean. Knowing what you know now, do you wish you'd walked past me and made it to your meeting on time? I thought about it seriously. About the stress and humiliation of being late. About the 3 years I'd spent working toward a promotion that had nearly slipped away because of one act of kindness. No, I said finally. Even if this hadn't happened, even if you'd really been a homeless veteran and I'd gotten fired for being late, I wouldn't regret it. Because it was the right thing to do. Robert's smile could have powered the building. That, Sarah, is exactly why you're the right person for this job. I'm writing this from my corner office, watching the snow fall over Lake Michigan. It's been 6 months since that Tuesday morning that changed my life, and I still sometimes can't believe it's real. The Ethical Investment Initiative has exceeded every projection. We've attracted over $200 million in new client investments, specifically from people who want their money to make a positive impact. Our sustainable energy portfolio alone has generated returns 23% higher than the industry average, while funding solar projects that provide clean electricity to underserved communities. But the numbers, impressive as they are, aren't what I'm most proud of. Yesterday, I walked past the same corner where I met Robert 6 months ago. There was a different person sitting there, a woman, maybe my age, with a cardboard sign and tired eyes. I stopped, of course. Her name was Maria, and she'd lost her job as a nurse when the hospital downsized. We went to the same diner. She ordered the breakfast special, and we talked for an hour about healthcare and hope and the way life can change in an instant. When I gave the waitress my card to pay, Maria grabbed my hand. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "Because someone did it for me once," I told her. And it changed everything. I gave Maria the business card for our company's new employee assistance program, another initiative Robert approved after our conversation about second chances. She starts as a financial counselor next month. Robert says I'm developing what he calls the ripple effect mentality, the understanding that every act of kindness creates waves we may never see, but that shape the world in ways we can't imagine. Marcus, by the way, landed on his feet. He's working for a competitor now, making slightly less money but apparently still telling anyone who will listen that my promotion was a fluke and that bleeding hearts don't belong in finance. Some people never learn. Tom Bradley actually thanked me last week. The reorganization forced him to examine his own priorities, and he's been volunteering at a financial literacy program for low-income families. Turns out, he told me, helping people feels better than just helping myself. But the biggest change isn't in my bank account or my job title. It's in how I see the world. Every morning, walking to work, I notice things I used to miss. The security guard who always says good morning. The woman who sells flowers on the corner. The businessman who drops $1 in every homeless person's cup without being asked. There's so much kindness in the world, so much quiet heroism happening in the spaces between our busy lives. You just have to slow down enough to see it. Robert still comes to the office every day, still leads with the same combination of business acumen and human decency that made him successful. But sometimes, when he thinks no one is looking, I catch him smiling at something, maybe remembering a conversation from a diner booth, maybe thinking about the woman who stopped when everyone else kept walking. Last month, he told me something I'll never forget. "Sarah, I've learned that success isn't about reaching the top of the ladder. It's about remembering to help others climb while you're climbing yourself." 3 weeks ago, I got a letter from a man named James. He'd heard my story somehow, these things have a way of spreading, and wanted to share his own. He'd been homeless for 2 years after a series of medical bills bankrupted him. One morning, a young executive bought him breakfast and listened to his story. That executive helped him get clean clothes for a job interview. He's now employed and housed, and he sends that executive a thank you card every Christmas. James wanted me to know that kindness multiplies. That the breakfast I bought for Robert wasn't just one good deed, it was the first link in a chain of good deeds that's still growing. I keep that letter in my desk drawer, next to the photo Robert took of us in the diner. Both remind me of the same truth. We're all just people trying to make it through our days with dignity and hope. And sometimes, the smallest gesture, a cup of coffee, a warm meal, a moment of genuine attention, can change everything. Not just for the person receiving the kindness, but for the person offering it. Because here's what I've learned. Character isn't something you have or don't have. It's something you choose, moment by moment, decision by decision. And every choice to see the humanity in others, to offer help when you don't have to choose compassion over convenience, every one of those choices changes you as much as it changes the world around you. 6 months ago, I was just another ambitious analyst in a navy blazer, running late for a meeting that felt like the most important moment of my career. Today, I know that the most important moment of my career, of my life, happened on the concrete steps outside a bank when I stopped running long enough to see a person who needed to be seen. If you take anything from my story, let it be this: you never know who you're talking to. You never know whose life you might change with a simple act of kindness. And you never know how that kindness might come back to change your own life in ways you can't imagine. But here's the secret: it doesn't matter if it comes back to you or not. It doesn't matter if the homeless person is secretly a CEO or if they're just a person who needs help. What matters is that you choose to see them as human. What matters is that you choose kindness over indifference, compassion over convenience. Marcus was wrong about one thing: character isn't a weakness in the business world. Character is the foundation that every lasting success is built on. It's what transforms transactions into relationships, competition into collaboration, and jobs into callings. Robert Blackstone taught me that business, at its best, is about creating value, not just financial value, but human value. It's about building a world where people can thrive, where dignity is universal, and where success is measured not just by what you accumulate, but by what you contribute. Every morning when I walk to work now, I carry $20 in my pocket and I keep my eyes open. Not because I'm looking for another CEO in disguise, but because I'm looking for another human being who might need to be reminded that they matter. Sometimes it's Maria, who's become one of our most dedicated employees. Sometimes it's someone new. Sometimes it's just the opportunity to say good morning to someone who expected to be invisible. But every single time, I'm reminded that the best investment I ever made wasn't in a stock or a bond or a diversified portfolio. It was in a cup of coffee and a breakfast special served to a stranger on a cold Tuesday morning. And that investment, it's still paying dividends. That was my story. If it resonates with you, if it reminds you of a time when someone showed you unexpected kindness, or when you had the chance to help someone who needed it, I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. Don't forget to hit that like button if this story moved you, and subscribe for more stories about the moments that change everything. Because I truly believe that we all have the power to be someone's miracle. We just have to be brave enough to stop and see the opportunities for kindness that surround us every day. What's your coffee and breakfast story? Share it below. You never know who might need to hear it.